It started as a joke. Or, more accurately, as a trend. A DNA test, ordered out of boredom, had become for my generation what a digital horoscope or a which friend's character are you quiz was. It was a rite of passage for 20-somethings, right up there with getting your first overdraft fee or seriously considering the benefits of fiber. Just a way to spend $100 to find out you're 2% Neanderthal and then post memes about it for a week. My results weren't funny. They were wrong. At least, I thought so for the first 15 minutes. Those 15 blissful, naive minutes before I realized they weren't wrong at all. That my entire life, my entire family, every childhood memory and every family photo on the mantelpiece, was a lie. A carefully constructed, well-acted lie in which I had been given the lead role without ever being handed a script. This is my story. I'm telling it now because no one else will. They're all too busy guarding their secrets. But the truth, as it turns out, has a way of seeping out. Sometimes, it's through an envelope with a DNA test inside. I was in college, a junior literature major, surviving on a diet of coffee, sarcasm, and the existential dread of a looming Faulkner paper. My life was predictable to the point of being boring, and I was even proud of it. In a world obsessed with finding its own uniqueness, I was a bastion of delightful normalcy. It all started in our dorm's common kitchen, a place that smelled of burnt pizza and cheap laundry detergent. My friend Chloe, a girl who changed her hair color more often than I changed my bedsheets, was waving her phone around as if she just discovered the secret to eternal youth. "Maya, you have to see this," she declared, shoving the screen in my face. "I'm 12% Irish. It makes so much sense now why I get so emotional about bad weather and love potatoes. And 3% Ashkenazi Jewish. Now I can complain with historical authority." "Congratulations," I said, not looking up from my textbook. "Your personality just gained a few new stereotypes to justify your terrible moods." Chloe ignored my jab. She was ecstatic. "You have to do it. Everyone's doing it. Jake found out he has a third cousin in Ohio, and Sarah learned she's a distant relative of some Scottish baron who was beheaded for stealing sheep. It's history." I snorted. "My history is the beige station wagon of family sagas," with Chloe. "No beheaded barons, no long-lost brothers. Just a line of very boring people from the Midwest who probably thought salt was an exotic spice. My family history really was simple and stable. So much so that talking about it was like reading the instruction manual for a microwave aloud. I grew up with my mom and dad in a small house with a well-kept lawn. My dad, Mark, was an engineer. He smelled of sawdust and patience. He taught me how to ride a bike, patiently explaining the laws of physics while I, once again, scraped asphalt off my tear-streaked knees. He told me terrible jokes that were never funny, but he laughed so contagiously that I couldn't help but join in. He died when I was 8. A sudden heart attack that ripped the center of my universe out. The world went from bright and safe to muted and shaky. After that, Uncle Alex became a much bigger part of my mom's and my life. Alex was my dad's younger brother. A brighter, more charismatic version of him. If my dad was the reliable family sedan, Alex was the sports coupe with a temperamental engine. He was an artist, lived in a converted loft downtown, and always showed up exactly when he was needed. Or even when he wasn't. He became a sort of stand-in father figure. He'd fix a leaky faucet, come to my school plays, and sit in the front row with a goofy smile and give the best Christmas presents. My mom always gave me something practical and necessary, a sweater, books. Alex gave me the things I dreamed of but was afraid to ask for, that specific telescope, that rare album from my favorite band. It was like he knew me better than anyone. He was always there. Always kind. Almost too present. He was the constant in my life after my father's death, a ghost who helped pay the bills and made sure I didn't lose my way. "Please," Chloe whined, pulling me out of my reverie. "There's a discount on the kit. Only $79 to solve the mystery of your existence." "The mystery of my existence is worth more than that," I muttered, but deep down, something stirred. Maybe it was simple curiosity. Maybe it was a desire to feel like part of something bigger than just an orphaned college student buried in books. Or maybe I just wanted Chloe to finally shut up. By the way, as I'm telling you my story, I'm genuinely curious if any of you have had a similar experience. Maybe not this dramatic, I hope, but if a DNA test ever threw you a curveball or made you see your family in a new light, drop a comment below. It would be strangely comforting to know I'm not the only one whose life was turned upside down. Buy a little box with a tube in it, anyway. I gave in. Fine, I said. Order it. But if it turns out I'm 50% disappointment and 50% caffeine, I'm demanding a refund. A week later, a glossy blue box arrived with the logo of a company promising to unlock your personal story. The whole thing felt like some kind of high-tech cult. Inside was a vial, an instruction sheet that looked like an infographic from a trendy magazine, and a small plastic biohazard bag, which gave the whole process a touch of absurd drama. I sat alone in my room, staring at the vial and feeling like an idiot. Collect enough saliva, not bubbles, to the black line, the instructions read. I spent the next 5 minutes trying to produce the required amount of spit, feeling like a lab rat Labrador. I sealed the vial, sent it off in the mail like a message in a bottle, and promptly forgot about it. I had a term paper, exams, and the end of the semester to worry about. Analyzing my own DNA was at the bottom of my priority list. 6 weeks passed. I'd turned in my Faulkner paper, getting a decent grade and a lasting aversion to Southern Gothic literature. I was sitting in my room, scrolling through social media and procrastinating on studying for my next exam, when a notification popped up on my phone. Subject: your results are ready. From Ancestry and me, INCM. My heart didn't skip a beat. No premonition. No dramatic music in the background. It was as mundane as a notification for a pizza discount. I clicked the link, yawning. Just another distraction, another digital trinket. 1. Click. That's all it took to light the fuse. The page loaded with the kind of cheerful corporate optimism common to websites that sell you your own identity in pieces. Bright blue and green banners, smiling stock photos of people of all races, hugging golden retrievers. The overall message was clear: get ready for happiness. We're about to tell you how special you are. I scrolled down, past the calls to buy a premium subscription or a custom frame for my genetic code. My eyes scanned the world map, speckled with colored blobs. Your ethnicity estimate? Well, let's see. 48% England and Northwestern Europe. 35% Germanic Europe. 12% Sweden and Denmark. 3% Scotland. And the cherry on top, 1.7% Sardinia. Exotic. Probably some great-great-great-grandfather legionary got lost on his way from Gaul and left a genetic footprint in the form of my inexplicable love for pasta. Otherwise, it was a predictable cocktail of European paleness. No surprises. I mentally prepared a sarcastic reply for Chloe. Turns out I'm 98.3% composed of people who consider mayonnaise a spicy condiment. I was about to close the tab when my gaze caught on another section at the bottom of the page. It was called Your DNA Matches. Usually, this is where people find their third cousins and great-granduncles. Amusing but useless connections to strangers around the world. I scrolled down out of sheer inertia. The first line made me blink. It was in bold and marked with a label that sent a chill down my spine. Parent. Underneath that word was a name. A name that had no right to be there. Alex Henderson. Next to the name was a small, circular profile picture. It was him. My Uncle Alex. In the photo, he was smiling his signature, crooked smile, standing in front of some lake. I had taken that picture myself last summer when we went fishing. He'd said he liked it because it made him look genuinely happy. I froze. The silence in the room suddenly became deafening. All I could hear was the quiet whir of my laptop's fan and the sound of my own heart, which had gone from a steady rhythm to a frantic drum solo. A mistake, asterisk. That was the first, life-saving thought. It had to be a bug. A glitch in the system. Human error. Some tired lab tech mixed up the vials. Or some clumsy programmer wrote a code that confuses uncles with fathers. Yes, that's it. It's just a ridiculous, absurd mistake. Damn, my fingers, feeling like they belong to someone else, reach for the keyboard and hit F5. Refresh, the page blinked and reloaded. Same stock photos. Same map. Same section and parent. Alex Henderson, nothing had changed. I hit F5 again. And again. And again. As if repeating this meaningless ritual could somehow alter reality. As if I could force a server on the other side of the country to admit its mistake if I was persistent enough. But the letters on the screen remained stubborn, motionless, and merciless. My brain kicked into overdrive, trying to find any rational explanation to cling to. Maybe parent is just some generic, stupid term the site uses for all close relatives? No, that's insane. There would be a separate category for an uncle, close relative, or something like that. Maybe someone hacked my account? A cruel, sophisticated prank? But who? Chloe? No, she had neither the technical skills nor that kind of cruelty. It wasn't her style. Or maybe Uncle Alex took a test too, and the system, seeing two profiles with the same last name and similar genetic material, just lost its mind and linked us in the most illogical way possible? I imagined the algorithm. Okay, last name Henderson, geolocation matches, lots of shared genes. Screw it. Let's make him the father. What could go wrong? The thought was so absurd that for a second, I almost laughed. But the laugh died in my throat, turning into a cold lump, because under Alex's name, there was another line of text I hadn't noticed before. It was written in fine print, like the clause in a contract that everyone ignores right before they lose their house. Predicted relationship, father. Confidence, extremely high. Extremely high. That phrase destroyed all my theories about glitches and errors. Extremely high left no room for doubt. This wasn't a bug. This was a verdict. I slowly pushed my chair back from the desk. My hands were shaking. I looked at my palms. The same hands as 10 minutes ago, but now they felt alien. I looked in the mirror above my dresser. The same face, the same eyes, the same curve of my brow. But whose was it? Whose eyes were these? Whose smile? My whole life, I believed I had my mother's eyes and my father's smile. Mark's smile. The man who taught me to ride a bike. The man whose picture I kept on my bedside table. The man who raised me. The name on the computer screen was screaming at me that it was all a lie, something was wrong. And that something wasn't in the website's code. It was in the very foundation of my life. My first instinct wasn't panic. It wasn't tears. It was a cold, furious need to prove the system wrong. I was a student whose life was built on analyzing texts and finding hidden meanings. And now, I was facing the most important text of my life, and I was convinced it contained a typo. My fingers flew across the keyboard as I composed an email to customer support. I rewrote it 3 times, trying to make it sound not like a hysterical girl's accusation, but a polite inquiry from a rational customer. Dear Ancestry and me support team, I recently received my DNA results, kit number XXXXXX, and noticed what appears to be a significant error in the DNA matches section. The system has identified my paternal uncle, Alex Henderson, as my apparent. Given that he is the brother of my late father, Mark Henderson, I assume there has been some kind of technical glitch in the algorithm, perhaps due to the high degree of genetic similarity and the shared last name. Could you please double-check the data and correct this anomaly? Sincerely, Amaya Henderson. I hit send, and felt a prickle of self-satisfied confidence. There. I'd given them a logical explanation. Now some clerk would look at it, say, oh, right, our algorithm sometimes confuses uncles and fathers, my bad, click a button, and everything would go back to normal, but while I waited for a response, I couldn't sit still. A gnawing anxiety was eating me from the inside. I opened a new browser tab and typed into the search bar, DNA test, confused uncle and father. And so I fell down the rabbit hole of online genealogy forums, amateur geneticist blogs, and scientific articles that made my humanities-focused brain begin to melt. I spent the entire night reading. My exam on the history of European literature was forgotten. I was now studying the history of my own code. That's when I first encountered the word centimorgana. It turned out it had nothing to do with centimeters or Captain Morgan. Centimorgans, cm, are a unit of measurement for genetic linkage. The more centimorgans you share with someone, the closer your relationship. This isn't a guess, not a theory. It's cold, hard math. My hands went cold as I found the charts. Parent/child, 3300-3700 cm, full siblings, 2200-3100 cm, uncle/niece, 1300-2200 cm. The difference wasn't just big. It was colossal. This wasn't a case of getting things mixed up. It was like confusing a person's height with the distance to the moon. With trembling fingers, I opened my results again. I scrolled down, found the match with Alex, and clicked on the details. And there it was, the number staring back at me from the screen like a death sentence. Shared DNA, 3587 cm.3, 587. I stared at that number, and the world narrowed to those 4 digits. 3587, not 1700. Not 2000. 3587. A direct hit in the parent/child range. Unambiguous. Final, the hope of a system error was dying a slow, painful death. I kept reading, grasping at straws. Maybe there was some rare genetic phenomenon? Endogamy in the family tree that artificially inflated the numbers? But our family was as ordinary as it gets. No marriages between third cousins in an isolated mountain village. We were boring people from the suburbs. The next morning, after a sleepless night spent in the company of genetic calculators and other people's family dramas, the reply from customer support arrived. It was short, polite, and utterly soulless. Dear Maya, thank you for your inquiry and for your patience. We have conducted an additional review of your data. Our laboratory processes and data analysis are held to an extremely high standard of accuracy. The amount of shared DNA between your profile and the profile of Alex Henderson, 3587 cm, is definitively consistent with a parent-child relationship. This number is well outside the expected range for an uncle-niece relationship. An error has been ruled out. Sincerely, the Ancestry and Me team. I dropped my phone on the bed. An error has been ruled out. Those 5 words echoed in my head like a gunshot. All my theories, all my hopes for a glitch, a bug, a human error, they all crumbled to dust. This wasn't a mistake. This was the truth. Alex was not my uncle. He was my biological father. I sat on the edge of my bed, staring at the wall. The room felt foreign, the air heavy. I was no longer Maya Henderson, literature student. I was a walking crime scene, a secret that had accidentally exposed itself, and then the thoughts started. Ugly, terrifying thoughts that I desperately tried to push away. How? Why? My parents were married. They were happy. At least, I thought they were. They were smiling in every picture. My father, Mark, adored me. I was his little princess. So how could this have happened? Was it an affair? Did my mother cheat on my dad with his own brother? The thought was sickening. A betrayal on a scale so massive it was hard to even imagine. Or was it something else? Maybe my father couldn't have children? And he and Alex made some kind of secret deal. A grim, cold pact that no one was ever supposed to know about? I pictured them, 3 adults, deciding my fate before I was even born. Or the darkest thought, the one that sent an icy shiver through my body, lurked in the blackest corner of my mind. Was it consensual? Was it rape? I clapped a hand over my mouth to keep from screaming. The image of my mother, so quiet, so proper. And Alex, so kind, so caring, twisted into something monstrous. I knew nothing. I only knew one thing for sure: the man I had called Dad was not my father. And the man I called Uncle was, and the worst part, my father, Mark. Did he know? Or did he die never knowing that the little girl he raised and loved more than anything in the world wasn't his? That his own brother and his wife had betrayed him in the cruelest way possible, that thought was the most painful of all. The thought that he had lived his short life in a lie. I couldn't take it anymore. I couldn't keep guessing. I needed an answer. And there was only one person who could give it to me. My mother. The drive home took 2 hours, but for me, it felt like an eternity. I drove on autopilot, staring at the passing landscape without seeing it. My world had shrunk to the laptop screen sitting on the passenger seat like a ticking time bomb. Every mile brought me closer to the explosion. My childhood home greeted me with silence and the smell of lavender air freshener. Everything was in its place: the neatly trimmed lawn, my mom's row of roses by the porch, the old swing set my dad used to push me on. It was all a symbol of stability and normalcy. And now it all felt like a stage. My mom was in the kitchen, taking a tray of cookies out of the oven. She smiled when she saw me. It was her usual warm, loving smile, the one that had always made me feel safe. Today, it made me sick to my stomach. Maya. Honey, what a surprise. You didn't say you were coming, she said, wiping her hands on her apron. I needed to talk to you. My voice sounded dry and foreign, even to me. She noticed the change in my tone. The smile faltered and slipped from her face. Did something happen? Are you okay? I couldn't answer. I just walked into the living room, opened my laptop on the coffee table, and turned the screen towards her. I didn't say a word. I just waited. My mom walked over, looking at me with confusion, then her gaze dropped to the screen. I watched her eyes scan the map, the ethnicity percentages, and then stop on the DNA matches section. She stared at the screen for a very, very long time. So long that the silence in the room became thick and viscous, like tar. I watched the color drain from her face. I watched as understanding, like a slow-acting poison, spread across her features. I watched her world collapse, just as mine had the night before. Her shoulders slumped. She slowly sank onto the sofa, her eyes still glued to the words, parent. Alex Henderson. And then she started to cry. They weren't loud, dramatic sobs. Just silent, steady tears that rolled down her cheeks. The tears of 2 decades of guilt. The tears of fear in the face of a truth that had finally broken free. I didn't think. She whispered through her tears. I never thought this would. She didn't finish. She didn't have to. Is it true? I asked. My voice was ice. Not a shred of sympathy. All my pity had burned away in the fire of that sleepless night. She nodded, burying her face in her hands. Her shoulders shook with sobs. I waited. I had turned to stone. I deserved an explanation. Not tears. Not self-pity. An explanation. How? It was the only word I could force out. She took a deep, shuddering breath and began to speak. Her voice was quiet, broken, and full of shame. It was a story she had obviously replayed in her mind 1,000 times, hoping she would never have to say it out loud. It happened a year before I was born. She and my father, Mark, were going through a difficult time. A rough patch, she called it. A banal, overused phrase meant to justify the unimaginable. Mark had lost his job. They were on the verge of bankruptcy. He had withdrawn into himself. Become distant. They barely spoke, living like strangers in the same house, and during that time, Alex was there. Always there. Understanding. Supportive. He'd come over, fix things around the house, bring groceries, listen to her complain about her life. He was the shoulder she could cry on. It only happened once, she whispered, staring at the floor. We'd had too much wine. We were just talking. And then, it just happened. It was a terrible, terrible mistake, Maya. I loved your father. I only ever loved him. A mistake. A one-time drunken mistake. And I was the result. I was the walking proof of the worst moment of her life. And Dad? I asked, my voice trembling. Did he know? She shook her head violently, tears streaming down her face again. No. No, of course not. It would have killed him. Alex and I, we made a pact. We swore no one would ever know. To everyone, you were Mark's daughter. And he was your father. He loved you more than anything in the world, Maya. He was such a wonderful father. Those words were meant to comfort me, but they stabbed me like knives. He was a wonderful father. Yes, he was. And he had lived his entire life in a lie. His wife and his own brother had betrayed him, and then they watched as he lovingly raised a child who was a living reminder of that betrayal. Did Alex know? I already knew the answer, but I needed to hear it. Yes, my mom whispered. He knew from the beginning. When I found out I was pregnant, I told him. He wanted to tell Mark everything. But I begged him not to. It would have destroyed everything. Our family. Their brotherhood. I convinced him to stay quiet. He agreed, for my sake. For your sake. He agreed to just be your uncle. Just your uncle, and suddenly, it all clicked into place. All his excessive kindness. His generous gifts. His constant presence in our lives, even after Mark's death. It wasn't just a brother's concern for his late brother's family. It was guilt. It was an attempt to be a father from a safe distance. Every kind deed, every word of support, every encouraging hug, it was all soaked in a lie. They had all let me live a lie. My mother, my biological father, and maybe even my dad, who unknowingly played the lead role in this farce. I stood up. I couldn't be in that room anymore. I couldn't breathe that air, thick with old secrets. I can't, I said to him. My mom looked up at me, her face tear-stained and lost. Maya, please. Please try to understand. My voice broke into a shout. All my composure, all my cold self-control, shattered. Understand what? That my whole life has been a performance? That the man I've mourned for half my life wasn't even my father? That my uncle isn't my uncle? That you both watched me grow up and lied to my face every single day? What am I supposed to understand? She didn't answer. She just sat there and cried. I turned and walked to the door. Maya, where are you going? Away from here, I threw back, not looking back. I burst out of the house, slamming the door behind me. The sound echoed in the quiet street. I got in my car, and only then did I let the tears come. I sobbed, pounding my fists on the steering wheel, out of rage, out of pain, out of a feeling of total, all-consuming betrayal. They didn't just lie to me. They stole the truth from me. They stole my father from me. Both of my fathers. I didn't go back to the dorm. The thought of having to explain to Chloe why my eyes were swollen and why I looked like I'd survived a plane crash was unbearable. I drove to the only motel on the edge of town I could afford, a dingy place with a faded neon vacancy sign and a room that smelled of bleach and desperation. I paid in cash for 3 nights. I needed a place where no one knew me. A place with no past. For the first 24 hours, I just slept. It wasn't sleep so much as oblivion, a defense mechanism of a body that had simply shut down, unable to process what had happened. When I woke up, the world outside was gray and rainy. It matched my mood perfectly, and then the calls and messages started. At first, it was my mom. Dozens of missed calls. Messages full of pleas. Maya, please answer. I'm so worried. Honey, let's talk. Don't do this. I love you more than anything in the world. Please come home. I looked at the messages with cold detachment. The words, I love you, felt as fake as everything else. I didn't answer. I just silenced my phone and threw it to the other side of the room. Then a message came from Alex. My heart stopped when I saw his name on the screen. Maya, your mom told me you know. I am so sorry. Please call me. I need to explain. I stared at his message. He needs to explain. The irony. For 21 years, he had said nothing. For 21 years, he had played the part of the cool uncle. And now, suddenly, he is needed to explain. No, thank you. That train has left the station. I blocked his number. Then I blocked my mom's number. I didn't want to hear from them. I didn't want their explanations, their apologies, their pathetic attempts to justify the unjustifiable. I wanted silence. I wanted emptiness, and I got it. The phone went quiet. And in that deafening silence, the memories started to come, but now they were different. Distorted. Poisoned. I remembered being 10 and breaking my arm after falling out of a tree. My dad, Mark, was on a business trip. It was Alex who rushed to the hospital. He sat with me all night, holding my good hand and telling me stories about fictional pirates to distract me from the pain. At the time, it seemed like the height of kindness. Now, I saw it differently, a father's desperate attempt to be there for his child without having the right to. I remembered my 16th birthday. My mom gave me a practical laptop for school. Alex gave me my first guitar, an expensive acoustic I had been dreaming about for months. He said, "You have the soul of a musician, I can see it." At the time, I was over the moon. Now I understood, it wasn't just a gift. It was an act of guilt, paid for with money. An attempt to buy the love he couldn't claim openly. I remembered the countless heart-to-heart talks. About boys, about the future, about my dreams. He always listened so intently. Gave such wise advice. He'd say, "You can be anything you want, Maya. You have a strength in you that others don't." At the time, I thought he just believed in me. Now I wondered, what did he see in me? His own reflection? His lost chance at fatherhood, the most agonizing memory was of his gaze. The way he would sometimes look at me when he thought I wasn't watching. There was a mixture of tenderness, pride, and something else in his eyes. A deep, hidden sadness. I always thought he was mourning his brother, seeing his features in me. What a cruel irony. He was mourning himself. For the life he never had. I sat on the floor of that cheap motel, and the fragments of my past assembled themselves into a new, ugly picture. My life was no longer mine. It was their secret. My achievements, my failures, my joys and sorrows, they were all part of their long, meticulously crafted lie. Did I ever really know him? Alex? Or did I only know the character he played? The kind, caring uncle. And who was the real Alex? The man who slept with his brother's wife? The man who carried that secret for 20 years, and me? Who was I? I always thought I was the daughter of Mark Henderson, the engineer with a kind heart and bad jokes. I thought I inherited his stubbornness and his love for order. But if he wasn't my father, what part of that was true? I am the daughter of Alex Henderson, the artist with sad eyes and a closet full of skeletons. What did I inherit from him? A capacity for lies? A talent for self-deception. The emptiness I had craved filled me completely. But it wasn't a calm, cleansing emptiness. It was a vacuum where there was no air to breathe. I hadn't just lost an uncle and a mother. I had lost a father. Twice. One to death. The other to the truth, and worst of all, I had lost myself. 3 days in the motel turned into a week. I skipped classes, ignored messages from worried friends, and lived on vending machine junk food and terrible coffee. The emptiness didn't go away, it just got heavier, like a wet blanket. I realized I couldn't get out of this on my own. Either I did something, or this black hole was going to swallow me whole. The first step was a call to the university's counseling services. Talking to a stranger on the phone about how my uncle was actually my father felt surreal. I was saying the words out loud for the first time, and they sounded like the ravings of a madwoman. But the woman on the other end of the line, a therapist named Dr. Evans, listened without a hint of surprise. Apparently, stories of family secrets were nothing new in her line of work. Your feelings are completely valid, Maya, she said in her calm, even voice. You're not just experiencing shock. You're experiencing a loss of identity. And grief. Grief. That word hit the mark. I was grieving. Grieving for the father I thought I had but never did. Grieving for the uncle who turned out to be someone else. Grieving for the mother I could no longer trust. But most of all, I was grieving for the version of myself that existed just a week ago, naive, but whole that I started going to therapy twice a week. Dr. Evans suggested I keep a journal. Write everything down, she said. Even the ugliest, angriest, most illogical thoughts. Not for anyone else. For yourself. Let them out so they don't poison you from the inside. I bought the plainest notebook I could find and started writing. The pages filled with rage, resentment, and questions without answers. I wrote letters I would never send. Letters to Mark, my dad, asking if he would have forgiven them. Letters to my mom, full of accusations. Letters to Alex, consisting of a single word, why? It didn't bring relief, but it helped to organize the chaos in my head. I went back to the dorm. I lied to Chloe, telling her I had some family problems, without going into detail. She could see I wasn't okay, but to her credit, she didn't pry. She would just quietly put a plate of hot food in front of me or make me a cup of tea. Her silent support meant more than any words could, but home. I couldn't go home. The thought of being within those walls again was unbearable. I started looking at photographs, searching for things I'd never noticed before. Here I am at 5, sitting on my dad Mark's shoulders. We're both laughing. But now I look at Alex, standing a little to the side. He has a smile on his face, but his eyes hold that same old sorrow. He's looking at us the way you look at someone else's happiness through a shop window. Here I am at 12, Christmas morning. I'm in new pajamas, unwrapping presents. Alex is sitting in the armchair by the fireplace. He's the only one not looking at the gifts. He's looking at me. With an intensity that makes me uncomfortable even now, just looking at the photo, every picture, every memory, was now passed through a new filter. Everything felt fake. A staged scene, performed for me, the only audience member who didn't know it was a play. My life felt like the Truman Show, only at the end, nobody applauded. One evening, as I was sitting over my textbooks, trying to force myself to concentrate, my phone vibrated. An unknown number. I don't usually answer those, but something made me press the green button. Maya. I recognized his voice instantly. Alex. He must have bought a new SIM card. My first instinct was to hang up. But I froze, listening to the silence on the line, punctuated by his breathing. Maya, please, don't hang up, he said quickly, as if he was afraid I would. Just 1 minute. I want to say I'm sorry. I know those words mean nothing right now, but I never wanted to hurt you. Never. His voice was trembling. I said nothing. What could I say? Everything I did, all these years. He faltered, searching for words. It was wrong, I know. We should have told you. A long time ago. But we were cowards. Your mom was afraid of losing you. And I was afraid of the way you're looking at me now. With hatred. He paused. I was still silent. I just want you to know one thing, he said quietly, and there was so much pain in his voice I could almost feel it through the phone. I have always loved you. From the very day I knew you existed. I loved you as an uncle, as a friend, as the father I didn't dare to be. I will always love you, no matter what happens. I swallowed the lump in my throat. His words, his sincere pain, it was all real. But it wasn't enough. Love without truth. I finally said, my voice hoarse and alien. Isn't love, Alex. It's just a prettier cage. I hung up. I sat there, staring at the dark screen of my phone, and for the first time in days, I felt not rage or pain, but a kind of devastating sadness. He was a victim of this lie, too. They all were. They had built this prison themselves and locked themselves inside it for 20 years, but that didn't excuse them. Their fear, their guilt, their love, that was all theirs. And my pain was mine. And I had to decide what to do with it. Months have passed. The semester ended, and my grades were miraculously decent. Apparently, panic and adrenaline can be excellent study aids. I didn't go home for the summer. I rented a tiny sublet above a noisy coffee shop and got a job as a waitress. I wanted simple, understandable tasks: bring people coffee, take away dirty plates, get tips. I wanted to be physically exhausted so I'd have less energy left for introspection. I don't know if I'll ever speak to Alex again. Sometimes, I'm almost tempted. I want to ask him everything. What it was like to watch another man raise me. Did he feel jealousy? Guilt? Joy? I want to understand him. But then I remember that understanding is the first step toward forgiveness, and I'm not sure I'm ready to take even that step. To forgive him would be to say that his 20 years of cowardice were acceptable. And they weren't. I don't know if I'll ever truly forgive my mother. Our bond was different. Deeper. And the betrayal from her feels sharper. She was my anchor, my definition of home. Now that anchor is gone, and I'm adrift in an open sea. We text. Short, polite messages about the weather and how I'm doing. How are you? Fine. Take care. You too. It's a dance on the ashes of what we once had, an attempt to pretend the house is still standing when we both know it's just charred walls. Maybe one day we can build something new on this spot. But it will be a completely different structure. And it will never be as cozy or safe as the old one. I'm not telling this story for pity. I'm telling it because secrets only have power when they're kept in the dark. Bringing this story into the light is the only way I can reclaim any power over it. If this story resonated with you, if you've ever dealt with a family secret or just feel that truth is important, then subscribing to the channel or liking this video isn't just a click. It's a kind of signal that I'm not alone in this. And that means a lot, but there is one thing I know for sure now: DNA doesn't lie, people lie. Memories can be deceptive. Photographs show only a tiny, edited sliver of reality. But the sequence of adenine, guanine, cytosine, and thymine in my cells is an undeniable, stubborn truth. In a world where all my foundations have crumbled, that scientific fact has become my only bedrock. It's hard, it's cold, but it's absolutely reliable. They say the truth will set you free. That's a lie, too. Or at least, it's not the whole truth. First, the truth locks you in a cage of pain and rage. It forces you to look at the ugliest sides of the people you loved. It rips your skin off and leaves you bleeding in the wind. Sometimes, the truth cuts far deeper than the silence ever could. The silence was a chronic, dull ache I didn't even know I had. The truth is surgery without anesthesia. Painful, brutal. But perhaps the only thing that could remove the tumor of lies that had been growing in the heart of my family. So, who am I now? Sometimes I look in the mirror and try to see. I see the curve of my mother's eyebrows. But whose chin do I have? Is it stubborn, like Mark's? Or is the shape of my lips like Alex's in those old photos, before he learned to hide his sadness behind a smile? I am a living collage, pieced together from love and lies, secrets and circumstance. I am the daughter of an engineer who taught me logic. And I am the daughter of an artist who, without meaning to, taught me that the brightest colors can hide the deepest darkness. This is my story. My name is Maya Henderson. I decided to keep the last name. The name of the man who raised me and the name of the man who gave me life. It belongs to both of them. But now, it belongs to me, too, as a reminder of all the complexity and absurdity of my origins. I wasn't supposed to know who I really am. My knowledge is a glitch in their carefully designed system. A side effect of a harmless pastime, but now I know, and no one can ever take that away from me.